In Oblivion Remastered, a variety of features were changed compared to the original release, so even if you've played the original version, some stuff's just different now, including some aspects of balance. Originally in Oblivion, strength determined all of your melee weapon damage. It was pretty straightforward, just increase your strength and you'll hit harder with all of the melee weapons. But now, in the remaster, both daggers and short swords were instead moved to get damage from agility instead of strength. This being a pretty big balance change, as bows also get damage from agility. The bow-dagger hybrid build meta is definitely here. Daggers are honestly pretty good in this game. A really big change for some of you, like if you already played Oblivion and were playing around this, fatigue no longer negatively impacts damage. That feature was just flat out removed from the game. Originally in Oblivion, the lower your fatigue or stamina, the lower your melee weapon damage. But no, that's just no longer a thing with the remaster, so you don't have to play that way anymore. But we also got some new additions as well. Based off how high your endurance is, you'll now automatically start regenerating health after combat, and this happens fairly fast. This being a huge quality of life improvement over having to spam minor heals to get back to full HP. Lots of the skill perks also got changed. In Oblivion, you unlock perks by progressing skills. Previously, most of the cool new abilities would unlock at level 50, but now many of these have been reduced to level 25. So, with relative ease, you can unlock things like dodge by hitting level 25 in acrobatics as opposed to level 50 like it was in the original. And in fact, you can get this almost instantly, even from the very start of the game. Just find a low object to jump under, and literally in a couple of minutes of jumping, I was at level 25 and then had the dodge ability fully unlocked. And dodge does really open up combat. It was reworked for the remaster, and now you can dodge in any direction, and it makes it great for countering. And just overall, I found it made combat a lot more interesting and dynamic. And in a similar vein, headshots with ranged weapons seem to be a thing now, at least somewhat. So if you've never played Oblivion, you've probably been targeting heads anyway. I think most modern gamers just do that. But technically, in the original game, where you hit an enemy didn't actually matter. But in Oblivion Remastered, at points, headshots are definitely doing more damage. Archery as a whole was reworked, so it's not totally clear how this all works. It still seems like there's some inconsistencies, but generally, yeah, it actually makes sense to click on an enemy's head now. And if you ever need to sheath an arrow after pulling it back, you can simply open the item wheel to cancel the firing. In the 48 hours since release, there have been a ton of guides on how to get some of the best items in Oblivion, but you might not want to do that. One of the most commonly shared examples of easy god tier items early game is with Umbra, mostly because you could just cheese this one super early on to get some really good items right at the start. Go to this location on the map. It'll be where you enter Umbra's dungeon. The dungeon itself is quite simple with minimal enemies, and in the final room, you're going to find a neutral Umbra, where you can either set the difficulty to super low to try to fight her, which would be technically possible, but as a level 3, that does seem pretty difficult. And instead, what many are finding is easier is just run away. Umbra will chase you as long as you hit her at least once, and make sure you do that, and continue to chase you even out of her dungeon and just follow you as far as you can go. Once you know it, right after leaving that dungeon, you can see that Imperial City is just a short run away. So basically the strategy here is just run to Imperial City with Umbra chasing behind you, and as you do eventually get into the city, you can just have some of the local guards finish her off for you. You can of course help in this fight, but just be very careful to not hit a guard or you could end up screwing all of this up. And then, yeah, from literally 30 minutes into the game, you can have some of the very best gear in the game. And honestly, Umbra is one of the few weapons you should actually do this with. Unique loot in Oblivion scales with your level. So which level you are when you get an item, particularly a unique item, will dictate its stats. So if you're a higher level, you'll often get a better version of that item. So as a simple example here with Chillrend, claiming it at level 3, I get a far worse version of this sword compared to claiming it at level 25. A lot of people here focus on the damage, and while, yeah, it jumps from 3 to 9, as well as the value skyrockets, damage is going to scale as you level up anyway, so that's honestly not even the biggest consideration. The really important stat are the effects on that unique weapon. This level 25 Chillrend is dealing 4 times as much frost damage per hit, and weakening enemies nearly 4 times as much towards that damage. The way this works is there are level ranges that items can spawn in, so if you're grabbing a god tier piece of loot at level 1, 2, or even even 3, you're just going to be getting the worst version of that loot, and if you wait a few more levels, you'll probably get a better version, and so on and so forth. But since 𝙀𝙀's unique ability is only ever downloading souls to soul gems every 2 minutes, it doesn't matter when you get it. There might be some slight damage variations as well as its value could evolve, but the unique effect will always be the same and 𝙀𝙀 will always be pretty powerful. But when it comes to just about every other item, even including some of 𝙀𝙀's apparel, make sure it's actually worth grabbing early into the game. If you've been having issues with performance in Oblivion Remastered, you might be making it worse accidentally. There seems to be some kind of bug that causes instability and can even make your FPS lower after changing your graphics settings while loaded into the game, as opposed to doing it from the main menu. So while, yeah, it's annoying, at least for now, while editing things around your visuals, I would highly recommend doing it from the main menu and then restarting the game after applying those changes. But you should also claim your free stuff. Even if you bought the base version of Oblivion Remastered, you do get a free DLC and a free horse if you want it. And you can get this content immediately. Simply head over to Chestnut Handy Stables and speak to Snack about getting a horse, and she will provide you with Old Nag completely for free and with a set of steel horse armor. This being different than the Deluxe Edition horse armor that you can also get with this game. And if you don't want additional copies of that horse armor, subsequent pieces will be 500 gold. This of course is going to be the iconic horse armor DLC from Oblivion's original release. Back in the day, this one cost $2.50, and the horse armor DLC is largely credited as being the very first microtransaction from a major publisher. Thankfully with a remaster, you get it all for free, and it does provide a perfect starting point to get that early game horse. And in Oblivion, you can fast travel to many city locations from the very start of the game. You don't have to walk over and discover them first. So yeah, you literally can get this horse and armor in seconds if you want to. But speaking of maps, lots of people were worried that this game lost its local map since it was no longer a toggleable setting. But no, it's still here. You just need to zoom all the way in while in a major city or town. But fortunately, if you zoom out at all, it reverts to the world map. So there is a local map, you just have to zoom all the way in and then you're actually fixed at that level of zoom. But I do know many more of you are likely wondering about that other armor. If you bought the Deluxe Edition of Oblivion or the Deluxe Edition upgrade, it comes with a set of weapons and armor styled after 𝙀𝙀 and 𝙀𝙀. This content is locked behind new quests that you'll have to do. To get the 𝙀𝙀 set, you first must close that initial Oblivion gate, literally one of the first quests in the game with Seed to 𝙀𝙀. But after completing that quest, you'll find a priest named 𝙀𝙀𝙀𝙀 at 𝙀𝙀, who is going to trigger the completely new quest known as a Wound in Time. This not actually being from Oblivion at all, and being newly added to the remaster as a way to get some of these new items. And the quest itself is super simple. It's just a linear dungeon to clear, although halfway through you do need to return to the quest giver and then go run all the way back to the dungeon to actually finish it and enter into its final stages. But otherwise, yeah, it's just one dungeon to clear. Even after the quest, you don't actually get the items or armor deposited into your inventory, and instead you'll have to go up to this NPC and ask for them. Talk to 𝙀𝙀 about equipment, and here you can get an unlimited quantity of those weapons and armors, which I think is a pretty great addition. They have no gold value, so getting an unlimited quantity isn't an issue, and as you do level up your character, as we just talked about, you can return to this NPC to constantly get a better version of that item, assuming you actually leveled up enough. But conversely, if you instead want the 𝙀𝙀 set, you need to head to the Imperial City, and even more specifically, the Talos Plaza district. Right next to this big dragon statue, you could find a Mythic Dawn pamphlet that will trigger the start of the quest Burning Trail. This quest is a lot more hands-on. The various quest stages will lead you to a certain location, but then once there, you'll have to look around to try and find the next pamphlet. And you'll have to do that several times over. With Oblivion Remastered, Bethesda implemented the Clairvoyance spell. You have it unlocked automatically right from the start of the game, and using this one will show you the path to objectives, which can be incredibly handy while playing this quest. But eventually, this will lead you to Bravel, where you must persuade an NPC that you are a part of the Mythic Dawn. Things work differently in Oblivion, so when the dialogue option fails, like just nothing will happen as you try and go through it, you have to click on the persuade and actually increase your standing with this NPC through the minigame. And after successfully doing this, you will be tasked with attending one of the Mythic Dawn meetings. In the end, you are left with the ability to summon Mehrunes Harbinger, who does have the ability to give you all of the equipment via dialogue as well as an unlimited quantity of it, just like the other NPC. Although, outside of that, this NPC doesn't do anything, it's not like he's going to help you in fights. This set, of course, having a much darker and evil theme, if that's what you're after. I personally find the 𝙀𝙀 stuff to be a bit nicer overall, but both armor sets do look amazing, and after finishing either of these quests and unlocking these armors, you can also return to Snack at the Chestnut Handy Stables to buy matching horse armor sets. This either being the Order or Cataclysm horse armors, although be warned, at least for me, after switching horse armor once, it wouldn't actually let me switch horse armor a second time. But either way, both of these horse armors do look really good and act as a great complement to the overall set, but of course sadly you do have to pay 500 gold to get this on your horse. One of the sort of weird changes with Oblivion Remastered is the difficulty scaling. In Oblivion originally, the difficulty was actually a slider, so you could tune things to be insanely hard, where everyone is a bullet sponge, and you are carrying a pea shooter, or so easy that you basically can't die anymore. But the remaster, they just did away with that, and instead adapted it to 5 difficulty options, much more similar to Skyrim. But in reality, this is quite poorly implemented as you actually try and change the difficulty mode. You can see here while I'm playing on Adept, this goblin barely does any damage to me, and I could pretty easily take them down with my dagger, just using a few basic attacks and I'm through. So typically in a situation like this, I would want to increase the difficulty. Except if I go one tick up on Expert, I literally can't kill the goblin anymore. He does a nice chunk more damage to me, but most notably, I can barely damage him now. And in extended gameplay, I died twice trying to fight and actually kill this goblin. Moving things up to Master, and I basically can't damage the goblin at all anymore. While conversely, all of their hits on me chunks me for a ton of HP. Playing on this difficulty is nearly impossible for somebody at my skill level. Conversely, if you go down to Novice or Apprentice, things aren't just easy, but stupid easy. I take down the goblin in 2 or 3 hits while also being basically invincible. Those modes likely being nice for those just wanting to experience the story, but if you want something slightly easier than Adept, you just don't really have that. Novice makes the game's combat trivial to deal with, to the point where you don't really have to try. And it seems like what happened was, in the process of adapting this difficulty slider, some of these values were just poorly chosen, or we need more options to flesh it all out. Right now things are just tuned way too dramatically regardless of which direction you go. On Adept, your damage dealt and taken is at 1x. There's no modifiers up or down. Simply going to Expert makes enemies hit you 3 times as hard, while you're hitting them for 40% less damage. So just by tuning the difficulty up 1 tick, enemies get a 300% damage increase while you're dealing nearly half as much damage. That's just an abnormally large jump for one difficulty setting, especially when you're just going from normal to hard. And on Master, enemies are going to be hitting you 5 times as hard, while you get a nice 80% reduction to your own damage output. And compared to Skyrim, all of this is kind of insane. Enemies would only ever hit you at 3x damage, and Expert was a nice stepping stone to higher difficulty in Skyrim. In Oblivion originally, you could technically tune this even higher, with enemies dealing 6 times as much damage, so that's likely how we kind of got these crazy damage modifiers in the current version of Oblivion Remastered. They were looking at some of the crazy damage figures from the original version, but it was a slider, so all of that worked a lot better. You had way more freedom in your choice of difficulty because you could just tune things up or down a lot more freely with a lot more options in between, like quite literally 100 different difficulty options. When you try and adapt that down to 5, the same system is just not working right now. Because as it stands right now with the remaster, if you're playing on Expert or above, it's not that it's impossible, you definitely can beat the game, better players than me are doing it, it's just the reality is that it's going to be a dramatically harder game compared to the normal mode. The issue players are complaining about isn't that the game's too difficult per se, but instead that you're not able to really find a difficulty that plays how you want, at least for a lot of people. Oftentimes the difficulty modes are either way too hard or way too easy. Like just for comparison, going into this dungeon, on Expert I couldn't get past the very first goblin that was here. On Apprentice, I could literally eat shots all day because they did basically nothing and my health would automatically regenerate faster than most enemies could damage me.